The Senate will come to order. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I impose a call of the Senate.
The Senate is now under call. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and that the Sergeant-at-Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, in our Senate tradition, we start with prayer, and today's chaplain is Senate Chaplain Reverend Kirsten Fryer from Bethlehem Lutheran in the Midway in St. Paul. As a reminder, following the prayer, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Good morning, Senators. Lots of prayers for you in these last days, I promise. It is fun to be here on May 13th, because Monday, of course, was State Day, but today is the day when the news actually made it to St. Paul. So in that honor, let us pray. As we celebrate these 168 years of Minnesota statehood, we pause to remember our history, stories told and untold, stories still to be recovered and shared. We give thanks for all the people who make Minnesota what it is today, these senators and all of the people who are represented by them. Lead and guide these senators as they do the work they are called to do today, leading us in our quest to embrace what we all know to be true, that everyone who calls this great state home yesterday and today and in the days to come, we, all of us together, make Minnesota what it is. Le Toi du Nord. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, members. The Secretary will take the roll.
Abler, Barr, Bolden, Carlson, Champion, Clark, Coleman, Swadzinski, Dames, Dibble, Dornick, Draheim, Drazkowski, Duckworth, Farnsworth, Fateh, Frentz, Green, Grunhagen, Gustafson, Hochschild, Herr, Heinzman, Hemmingson Yeager, Hoffman, Holmstrom, Housley, Howe, Jasinski, Johnson, Johnson Stewart, Klein, Coran, Kroon, Kunish, Kupek, Lang, Latz, Liskey, Limmer, Lucero, Mann, Marty, Matthews, Maye Quade, McEwen, Miller, Mohammed, Murphy, Nelson, Umu Verbaten, Pappas, Pa, Port, Pratt, Putnam, Rarick, Rasmussen, Rest, Seeberger, Utke, Weber, Wiesenberg, Westlin, Westrom, Wickland, Zhang.
Members, a quorum is present. The following members intend to vote from a remote location pursuant to Rule 40.7. Senators Carlson, Herr, Muhammad, and Jung. Members, if you'd like to follow along, I'm reading from today's Senate agenda, which is dated Wednesday, May 13th, 2026. We will begin at the second order of business, which is executive and official communications. The following communications were received. Please make note, no action is required. Members, now we're going to the third order of business, which is messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following Senate file, as amended by the House, in which amendments the concurrence of the Senate is respectfully requested. Senate File Number 3210, a bill for an act relating to human rights, including disability accommodations as protection from discrimination. Senate File Number 3210 is herewith returned to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Senator Maye Quade for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Senate concur in the amendments by the House to Senate File Number 3210 and that the bill be placed on its repassage as amended.
Senator Maye Quade, will you be so kind as to explain the House changes to the bill?
Yes, Mr. President. The House changes to Senate File 3210 add in the word reasonable to accommodation and then refers back to the definition of disability also included in the Minnesota Human Rights Act.
Members, Senator Maye Quade moved that the Senate concur in the amendments by the House to Senate File Number 3210 and that the bill be placed on its repassage as amended. To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 3210, a bill for an act relating to human rights, including disability accommodations as protection from discrimination.
Third reading. Any other discussions? Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll on final passage as amended by the House. Members, please vote. And those who are responsible for remote voting, if you can make sure that you stay on top of it, that would be great. Senator Kunesh, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator
Excuse
Rest
me.
votes aye.
Yep. She votes aye.
Senator Rest voted
Yep.
in person.
Yep. Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Jung votes aye.
Senator Klein votes aye.
Senator Klein votes aye.
Senator Seeberger votes aye.
Senator Seeberger votes aye.
And Senator Friends votes aye.
And Senator Friend votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 42 ayes and 22 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Now, members, the Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has acceded to the request of the Senate for the appointment of a conference committee consisting of 4 members of the House on the amendments adopted by the House to the following Senate file. Senate File Number 4476, a bill for an act relating to state government, modifying provisions relating to human services continuity of care, aging and disability services, etc. There has been appointed as such committee on the part of the House Schumacher, Gilman, Noor, and Keeler. Senate File Number 4476 is herewith returned to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, no action is required. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has acceded to the request of the Senate for the appointment of a conference committee consisting of 4 members of the House on the amendments adopted by the House to the following Senate file. Senate File Number 4612, a bill for an act relating to state government, modifying provisions relating to the Departments of Health, Human Services, and Children, Youth, and Families. There has been appointed as such committee on the part of the House Bierman, Ryer, Backer, and Nadeau. Senate File Number 4612 is herewith returned to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, there's no action required. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House has adopted the recommendation and report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 4760 and repassed said bill in accordance with the report of the committee, so adopted. Senate File Number 4760, a bill for an act relating to public safety, modifying provisions regarding data protection, domestic abuse, etc. Senate File Number 4760 is herewith returned to the Senate. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, no action is required. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House refuses to concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 3426. House File Number 3426, a bill for an act relating to natural resources, appropriating money from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. The House respectfully requests that a conference committee of 4 members be appointed thereon. Jordan, Fisher, Heinzman, and Burkle have been appointed as such committee on the part of the House. House File Number 3426 is herewith transmitted to the Senate with the request that the Senate appoint a like committee. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
I'll now recognize Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of Senator Herr, I move the Senate accede to the request of the House for a conference committee of House File 3426, and that a conference committee of 4 members be appointed by the Subcommittee on Conference Committees on the part of the Senate to act with a like conference committee appointed on the part of the House.
On that motion, members, any discussion? All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce that the House refuses to concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 4252. House File Number 4252, a bill for an act relating to higher education, modifying student aid reporting requirements. The House respectfully requests that a conference committee of 4 members be appointed thereon. Wolgamott, Coulter, Robbins, and Rarick have been appointed as such committee on the part of the House. House File Number 4252 is herewith transmitted to the Senate with a request that the Senate appoint a like committee. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
I'll now recognize Senator Fateh for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate accede to the request of the House for a conference committee on HF 4252, and that a conference committee of 4 members be appointed by the Subcommittee on Conference Committees on the part of the Senate to act with the like conference committee appointed on the part of the House.
Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Secretary will read the next message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House, the following House files herewith transmitted. House File Numbers 4017 and 4138. Signed, Patrick Duffy Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
Members, no action is required. Members, we will now proceed to the 4th order of business. And the 4th order of business is first reading of House bills. The House files have been given their first reading and referred as indicated. We will now proceed to the 5th order of business, which is reports of committees. I'll call on Senator Murphy for a motion to adopt the committee reports.
Mr. President, I move the committee reports printed in the agenda and the addendum be adopted.
Any discussion on that motion? All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, we will now proceed to the sixth order of business, which is second reading of Senate bills. The Secretary will read the Senate file numbers.
Senate file numbers 4667, 4276, 3236, and 4696.
The Senate files have been given their second reading. Members, moving to the seventh order of business, which is second reading of House bills, the Secretary will read the House file number.
House file number 3489.
The House file has been given its second reading. Now moving to the eighth order of business, which is introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated with no modifications. Now moving to the ninth order of business, which is motions and resolutions. We will adopt the author's motion as one motion. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senate Resolution number 85 will be referred to the Committee on Rules and Administration. The Secretary will report Senate Resolution number 86.
Senate Resolution number 86, a Senate resolution relating to the conduct of Senate business during the interim between sessions.
I'll call on Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Senate Resolution number 86.
Senator Murphy, to the resolution, please explain it.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Resolution 86 provides for the conduct of business for the interim after the Senate adjourns sine die. There are some changes in this resolution as compared to the same resolution in past years. For the most part, the changes remove unnecessary or obsolete provisions and update language. The only substantive change allows the Secretary of the Senate to appoint a person to fill a vacancy in an elected officer position for the remainder of the interim. This resolution was reviewed and approved by the Rules Committee last week, and Mr. President, I'd ask for a roll call.
Roll call is already required. Is there any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, the Secretary will take the roll on Senate Resolution number 86. Members, please vote. We have to move expeditiously. Please, you're voting on Senate Resolution number 86. All senators having voted who desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 57 ayes and 0 nays, the resolution is adopted. The Secretary will report Senate Resolution number 87.
Senators Murphy, Johnson, and Champion introduced Senate Resolution number 87, a Senate resolution commemorating the lives and work of deceased senators.
I'll call on Senator Murphy for a motion. If you all would kindly be quiet on this one, please. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Senate Resolution number 87.
If you be so kind as to explain the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Every 2 years, we take up this resolution that acknowledges the loss of members, the lives of members in the previous term. Senate Resolution 87 is on your desk for your review. We are recognizing the loss of Bruce Anderson, Carrie Dietzick, Alice Johnson, Bob Kierlin, Don Samuelson, James Euland, and Ray Vanderveer, all members of this body. And members, it is the case, and it is often unnoticed, that we work in a place that is often riddled with division. But every person that comes and serves here brings a unique perspective and a voice, and they have made incredible choices, decisions, and contributions to the state of Minnesota. It is right that we recognize them today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other discussion on the resolution that commemorates the lives and the work of deceased senators? Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's very kind of sad to look at this list. I served with all of them except for James Ullin, but I did know him. I think we could say wonderful things about all of them. I don't know. Some of them we knew more recently, like obviously like Carrie and Bruce. Many of us, we talked about Bob after his passing. Don Samuelson, he was an amazing Health and Human Services chair and was president of the Senate. So it's just, I think we have to just hold them all in our hearts and their families and just be sad.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll do the adoption of Senate Resolution number 87, which commemorates the lives and works of deceased senators. All those in favor of adopting or passing the resolution, say aye. All those opposed, say no. The motion prevails, and Senate Resolution number 87 is adopted. Members, if you'd be so kind as to stand for a moment of silence with respect for our deceased senators. It will be about 30 seconds. Please bow your heads. Thank you, members. I'll now call on Senator Hoffman for a motion.
Mr. President, I move the appointments withdrawn from the Committee on Human Services and placed on the confirmation calendar under Senate Rule 8.2, reported in the Journal for May 13th, 2026, be returned to the committee for which they were withdrawn. Thank you, Mr. President.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members remaining under motions and resolutions, I'll call on Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to take up the confirmation calendar.
To that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. I'll now call on Senator Rest because we are taking up the confirmation calendar. Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have before us the confirmations of 3 members of the tax court. Mr. President, do I need to make these motions individually?
Yes, Senator Rest.
I move that the report from the Committee on Taxes reported April 29th, 2026, 2023, pertaining to appointments be taken from the table.
Members, any discussion? All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The next motion, Senator Rest.
I move that the foregoing report be now adopted.
On that motion, any discussion? All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Now, Senator Rest, for your motion number 3.
I move that in accordance with the report from the Committee on Taxes, reported April 29th, 2026, the Senate, having given its advice, do now consent to and confirm the appointments of Jane Bowman, St. Paul, Ramsey County, effective January 2nd, 2023, for a term expiring January 1st, 2029. Bradford, Delapena, St. Paul, Ramsey County, effective January 5th, 2021, for a term expiring January 4th, 2027. Beverly Luther Quast, St. Paul, Ramsey County, effective March 26, 2025, for a term expiring January 6, 2031. That is my motion, Mr. President.
Now, please explain your motion, any information that you want us to know about those that are on the confirmation calendar.
Jane Bowman, the Chief Judge, was appointed by Governor Walz for a term beginning January 2nd, 2023. She began as a judge on the tax court in January of 2020 before becoming Chief Judge in April 2022. Before her time on the tax court, Judge Bowman worked as an assistant Hennepin County attorney for 7 years, from 2012 to 2019, where she defended the county and Minnesota tax court in property tax matters. Bradford Delapena has sat on the Minnesota tax court since 2012 and has served as chief judge for much of that time. Before his work on the tax court, Judge Delapena was a sole practitioner for 5 years, representing individuals and businesses before the Minnesota Department of Revenue and the Minnesota Tax Court. Additionally, he was an adjunct professor at the University of Minnesota Law School for 20 years. Beverly Quast was appointed to the tax court by Governor Walz on March 3rd, 2025, for a term beginning March 26, 2025. She has worked as senior tax counsel for 3M for 6 years and was the director of international tax counsel at Ameriprise Financial prior to that. She spent her entire 17 years legal career working for tax law or in tax law. The 3 judges whose appointment are before you today reflect a balance of tax law knowledge between the public and private sectors and have experience representing both taxpayers and the government. Mr. President and members, these judges are well qualified and bring valuable expertise to the tax court. I hope you will support their confirmation.
Any further discussion? Senator Weber.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the lead on the tax committee, I just wish to add my opinion that indeed these individuals have good tax experience, have trial experience, and I would encourage a yes vote for them.
Members, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails, so the appointments are confirmed. Remaining on the motions and resolutions, I'm going to call on Senator Murphy to designate special orders. Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Rule 26, I designate the following bills be made special orders for immediate consideration.
Members, the special orders list is on your desk. It's dated May 13, 2026. We will begin with Senate File Number 3891. Senator Maye Quade.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate File 3891 is an excellent bill, and I believe it is the only Maye Quade rostrum bill that exists. This bill would bring Minnesota's chicken egg donation laws in line with most of the rest of the country, allowing chicken eggs to be donated up to 30 days past their quality assurance date when they are still safe to eat. Currently, food retailers are unable to donate eggs to hunger relief organizations once they are past that quality assurance date, even though the FDA guidelines state that eggs are food safe for 3 to 5 weeks past that date. Eggs are being removed from store shelves regardless, and the current law leaves food retailers with no choice but to throw out or compost these safe, in-demand foods. I want to remind everyone that Minnesotans are experiencing food insecurity and a real affordability crisis. Minnesota has seen 4 consecutive years of record-breaking numbers of food shelf visits, topping 9 million in 2025. That's 3 times the number of visits recorded in 2021 during the height of the pandemic. Right now, 20% of Minnesota families are experiencing food insecurities, meaning 1 in 5 families are unable to afford the food they need without assistance. And eggs are frequently listed as the most in-demand item and yet are only readily available 30% of the time. And so with this excellent bill, retailers are now going to be able to donate those eggs directly. The receiving organization will relabel the cartons to include a new use-by date and make very clear that the eggs cannot be resold. This bill is exactly the type of legislation we should be doing. We should scramble to our desks to vote green and make sure that we can support the broad coalition of food shelves, retailers, public health, and food waste prevention experts that have signed a letter in support of this bill on your desk. I urge a green vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Excellent, excellent. Senator Westrom.
Mr. President, this is an excellent bill. You stole my speech notes, so I'm not going to share them with your staff anymore. Mr. President, I would rise in support of this excellent bill. Let's not scramble it up. This is no yoke. We need to let these eggs that are still good for weeks and sometimes months after their best sell-by date go to good use, to the food shelves that they could be donated to help benefit people that are hungry, rather than throwing them away. And this is one of those common sense of all common sense bills. And so you've got a Maye Quade Westrom bill, which isn't very common in this Senate, but if we can rally around good eggs for good people, good Minnesotans at our good food shelves, that makes sense. So let's not scramble it up. Vote green.
Any other discussion? Senator Holmstrom.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Minnesota Freedom Caucus is proud to support this bill. This is a great example of proper governance. Thank you.
Senator Latz.
Mr. President, although this bill is not all it's cracked up to be, if you vote green, you will experience a moment of ecstasy akin to a religious experience.
Any other discussion? Oh, okay. The secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 3891, a bill for an act relating to agriculture allowing eggs to be donated past their quality assurance date.
Third reading. Senator Maye Quade.
Thank you, Mr. President. All yokes aside, members, we poached this idea from other states. We will now join their ranks as being able to provide more food to Minnesotans for free. Please vote green.
The secretary will take the roll on Senate File Number 3891. Members, please vote. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye. Senator Kunesh, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just scrambling for that last vote here. And so Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Klein votes aye.
Senator Klein votes aye.
Senator Seeberger votes aye. Oh, excuse me. I have her marked off, and I forgot to do that one. Egg on my face, sorry. Senator Vate votes aye.
Senator Vate votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
And Senator Rest votes aye.
And Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Jasinski, any others?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 65 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, we will now go to House File 4240. Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the amendment made to House File 4240 by the Committee on Rules and Administration in the report adopted May 11, 2026, pursuant to the Rule 45, be stricken.
On that motion, please explain the differences.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this particular bill is the Secretary of State's agency bill. We passed the provisions in our elections policy omnibus bill off this floor. And since that time, we have engaged, I have engaged in some informal discussions with our colleagues on in the other body, and based on that have been able to reach some agreements on how to move this bill forward. So we are starting with the House language and then amending it at this point to reflect the agreements that we've reached. The differences are primarily as follows. The new language now will include a provision that requires that for school district-only elections, there be at least one polling place in every county in which there are more than 5,000 registered voters in that district. It includes language which was also adopted on the Senate floor to prohibit candidates from placing wages on prediction markets regarding their own elections. It adds an effective date to a provision that we already passed into law to ensure that candidates for the Three Rivers Park District will be required to file a report this month. It ensures that language in this bill deletes an unneeded piece that was amended in a statutory provision in the Judiciary and Public Safety Bill, and then there are just some minor stylistic changes along with that, Mr. President.
Members, any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Mr. President, actually, I'm sorry, I actually have an amendment for the bill.
Oh, you have an amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry,
about that. We will not give the bill its third reading. Senator,
Please do.
Here we go.
Thank you. I'd like to offer the A4 amendment.
Senator Westlin offers the A4 amendment. The secretary will report the A4 amendment.
Senator Westlin moves to amend House File number 4240 as follows. Page 1, delete Section 1 and insert. This is the A4 amendment.
Senator, to your A4 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. So in line with the previous comments, we are replacing House Section 1 with the Senate Section 1 from our bill. Lines 1.20 deletes House Section 9, which was an appropriation, and as I've been telling everybody all year, there is no money. And then we have added the effective dates and other items that I mentioned previously, Mr. President.
Any other discussion on the A4? Seeing none, all in favor of adoption of the A4 amendment say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Now the secretary will give the bill its third reading.
House File number 4240, a bill for an act relating to elections, making various changes related to election administration.
Third reading. Any other discussion before we vote for final passage? Senator Westlin.
It's a great bill. Vote green.
The secretary will take the roll on on House File 4240. Members, please vote so we can move expeditiously. Senator Kunis, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Herb votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Muhammad votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Fateh votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
And Senator Rest votes aye.
And Senator Rest votes aye. Senator Jasinski, those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7, there doesn't appear to be any more. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 36 ayes and 28 noes, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, we will now go to House File 4239, and I'll call on Senator Murphy for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that House File number 4239 be taken from the table.
Members, it is now taken from the table. We have to vote on that motion. I'm about to vote on it. Thank you. You ready? Okay, members, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Just so you know, the front desk staff was just making sure that I knew that we didn't have to take a roll call vote on that one, but I knew that, so here we go. All right, Senator Westlin.
Mr. President.
Senator Murphy, for your designation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Senate Rule 26, I designate House File number 4239 be made a special order for immediate consideration.
That is another motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this bill is a bill coming to us from the House. Most of the provisions in this bill passed over to the other body in our omnibus bill. That bill is not moving on the other side, and so we, again, worked together across bodies and bipartisanly to take up this language. I will explain the differences between that bill and this bill, but just as a heads up, I do have an amendment on this as well. So,
what is your amendment?
The amendment will be the A5 amendment, Mr. Chair.
Senator Westlin offers the A5 amendment. The Secretary will report the A5 amendment.
Senator Westlin moves to amend House File number 4239 as follows. Page 3, line 23, delete $5,000 and insert. This is the A5 amendment.
Senator Westlin, to your A5 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. As with the last bill, what you have before us as it is being amended will represent conversations between the other body and this body to try to pass what is probably one of the most important bills we will do this year. This does include the lawn sign disclaimer language. It addresses the redaction of addresses contained in the Campaign Finance Board. The language that we are adopting will be somewhat broader than what we passed and is on the recommendation of the Campaign Finance Board Director. We are also changing it so that candidate can spend up to a total of $10,000 for structural improvements and security services, combined with a cap of $10,000. The Senate language previously broke out structural improvements and security services differently and had a higher cap for non-campaign disbursements. We are also adopting two provisions from the other body that were proposed by members across the aisle. One of those will allow for caucus leaders to have access to candidate street addresses from the campaign finance reports. They can only be used for official purposes and must be deleted within 30 days. And then the other piece is that the Campaign Finance Board chair will have the authority to dismiss a complaint as frivolous. Those are the primary differences, Mr. President, and the amendment brings the underlying bill into alignment with the discussions and agreements reached.
Any other discussion? Senator Jaskowski, we're on the A5 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rice, a point of order. The motion to take from the table did not receive an offer for a no vote and did not have an announcement of the vote. And while it's not very controversial, probably, Mr. President, I think the Secretary might appreciate if we do it correctly.
We did vote to take it off the table.
Just for clarity, when the motion was made in order to take the bill off the table, we did vote on that, and then there was a motion. Then it was a move to designate it, and I was going to do it as a motion when I should not have gone forward to try to do it as a motion, and I self-corrected myself. So the designation does not require a vote because it is not a motion. That is at the pleasure of the majority leader. Okay? Thank you. All right, now we're on the A5. Any other discussion on the A5 amendment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The A5 is adopted. Anything else, Senator Westlin, before we go to others? Any other discussion? Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate this bill. I don't spend a lot of time working on this stuff, but I just noticed there's a requirement for 4 seconds of exposure in a video ad or audio ad, whatever. That's in the bill, I think. Do you know what the current? That's on line 11.10. We have to have 4 seconds at the end. Do you know what the current law is? It's Senator Westlin yield, Mr. President. Do you want to yield for a question? Senator Westlin yield. I'm sorry.
Senator Westlin, will you yield? Senator Westlin, will you yield? She will yield. Senator Abler. Did you hear the question, Senator Westlin?
I did. I'm going to need a moment.
All right, we'll give you a moment.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senator. Actually, there is no current requirement, and I believe this was language that was developed with input from the Campaign Finance Board, and I believe Senator Curran.
Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Westlin, if she'd yield again, just to clarify a little more, and then I have one more question.
She will yield.
No, she won't.
Hey, I was trying to help you out there. If Senator Westlin would yield
Senator Abler,
again.
what was your request? I'm sorry.
If the Senator Westlin would yield again for a question.
Senator Westlin, will you yield? She will yield. Senator Abler.
Well, thank you, Mr. President and Senator Westlin. I think this is actually an interesting topic because there's all kinds of ads that are going to be created. So currently, you just have to flash your, like, who it's from, you know, I mean, not a nanosecond, but as long as it's there somewhere, then that's all we have to, that's the minimum requirement.
Senator Westlin.
Senator Westlin, to the question.
Well, Mr. President, I'm not entirely certain I understand the question. Could you please repeat it?
Well, sure, Mr. President.
Senator Abler.
And so if there's, I mean, I just thought there was a requirement for a second or two or something, and we're lengthening it to 4. But we have to, let's say I want to make an ad saying how amazing, on behalf of the Senator Champion, that I want to pay for it with my campaign money. Would I have to disclose? I don't have to disclose for very long. It just needs to be a little thing on there for momentarily, and when this takes effect, it'll be 4 seconds. Is that right?
Senator Westlin, to the question.
So, Senator Abler, the origins of this is as a result of a court case. And so this is clarifying language because previously it was ambiguous. This now sets a standard as a response to a court case. And again, it is on the advice of the Campaign Finance Board that they feel is reasonable.
Senator Abler.
Okay, I'm not trying to go round and round, but I appreciate that. And so then I was just reading the part about the cards, and I don't remember where that is in the bill, but for our little cards that we have, I know that I'm allowed to say prepared and paid for by a campaign committee and then a website. Is that changing at all?
Senator Westlin, are you asking her to yield?
Oh, wait, would she yield, Mr. President?
Senator Westlin, will you yield? Yes. She will yield. To the question, Senator Westlin.
Give me 1 second.
You certainly can have time.
My understanding, Mr. President and Senator, is that the language is changing slightly, that it does allow now for the use of a website that has an email or an email address. But it is a shorter requirement, but it is, again, to provide more clarity, and it is not a substantial change.
So, Senator Abler.
Thank you. Just one more question, if she would yield.
Senator Westlin, will you yield for one more question? She will. Senator Abler.
Mr. President, what's the effective date of the change of the audio-visual 4-second thing?
Senator Westlin, to the question when you're ready.
Mr. President, I'm fairly certain it's in the bill, but give me 1 second.
Senator Westlin.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was part of the amendment. It is an immediate effective date.
Senator Abler.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's just important, and I did not know that, and the amendment was new to me, and I don't serve on this committee. So I just think it's important for people to know that I think particularly one thing they have to be aware of, which I now am, if you're going to do a little Facebook ad or something, it needs a 4-second disclaimer on it. And I think we don't want anybody violating the law. And I think of all the elements, that's probably the one that is going to snag the most people unexpectedly. So thank you, Senator Westlin, and thank you, Mr. President.
Any other amendments or discussion before we give the bill its third reading? Seeing none, the Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
House File Number 4239, a bill for an act relating to campaign finance, providing for certain non-campaign disbursements.
Third reading, we're on House File 4239. Any discussion before we vote for final passage? Senator Westlin.
It's a great bipartisan, bicameral bill. Vote yes.
The Secretary will take the roll on House File 4239. Members, please vote. And Jessica. I remember that they explained it. Members, please vote. Senator Kunesh, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Mr. President, Senator Carlson votes aye.
Can you repeat that again?
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
And Senator Murphy votes aye.
And Senator Murphy votes aye. Senator Lang, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Jasinski votes no.
Senator Rasmussen votes no.
Senator Rasmussen votes no. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 46 ayes and 21 nays. The bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, we'll now go to House File 3404. Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. President. House File 3404 is a bill that increases the penalties for impersonating a peace officer in Minnesota. In a letter of support by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, the Minnesota Chiefs of Police, and the Minnesota Sheriff's Association, these trusted professionals said it best. Minnesotans expect and deserve absolute confidence when an individual presents themselves visually or verbally as a peace officer. That person is a duly licensed Minnesota peace officer. Mr. President, this bill helps reinforce trust in legitimate law enforcement officers in our state, and it sends a clear signal to people that will face stiff and severe consequences if they violate that trust. When I answered the door on June 14th, I did so because of the trust. And I never want another person in this state to have that trust shattered. And with today's bill, Mr. President, we're making sure it never happens again. I urge members to support this important legislation.
Any discussion or amendments? If there are no amendments, I'd like to go to third reading. Seeing none, the Secretary will give the bill its third reading.
House File Number 3404, a bill for an act relating to public safety, increasing criminal penalty for impersonating a peace officer.
Third reading, any discussion before we go for final passage on House File 3404? Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. President, and this is a very important bill.
We need to provide the deterrence for people that think that this is a way to get away with this. I tell you what, I'll just go down. That morning when they knocked on my door and I seen the vehicle out there, and I stepped outside my door, and the officer, the deputy, was around the corner of my garage trying to get into my home, and he came around. I assumed, because I seen that vehicle, that was a law enforcement officer, and it was, as we should be able to be reassured that that's it. He came inside my house, and then he told me what had happened. And what little hair I have on my head stood straight up. And I realized I made the same mistake that Senator Hoffman and Representative Hortman made. We need to make sure that others have that reassurance when they look out and see that vehicle or see that officer that portraying themselves as that. We are assured that they are that, and we have trust. Senator Hoffman, thank you for this bill. We need to provide that assurance. We need to provide that trust back into our law enforcement. Thank you.
Any other discussion before we go for final passage? Anything final, Senator Hoffman, or can we go right to final passage? It's up to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is a good bill. Please vote green.
The secretary will give the bill, the secretary will take the roll on final passage of House File 3404. Senator Cornish, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Herr votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Zhang votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Pappas votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
Senator Johnson Stewart votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
Senator Rest votes aye.
And Mr. President, Senator Murphy votes aye.
And Senator Murphy votes aye. Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes aye. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Johnson votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Senator Jasinski votes aye.
Senator Jasinski votes aye.
Senator Rasmussen votes aye.
Senator Rasmussen votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Wiesenberg votes aye.
Senator Wiesenberg votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 67 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and is title agreed to. I'll now go to Senator Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move a brief recess for the purpose of appointing conference committees.
All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is in a brief recess for the purpose of appointing conference committee members. The Senate will come to order. Senator Bowden.
Mr. President, is there a privileged report at the desk?
There is a privileged report at the desk. The Secretary will read the report.
Senator Murphy from the Subcommittee on Conference Committees recommends that the following senators be, and they hereby are, appointed as a conference committee on House File Number 4252, Senators Fateh, Umu Verbatim, Putnam, and Duckworth. House File Number 3426, Herr, McEwen, Kunish, and Westrom. Senator Bolden moves that the foregoing appointments be approved.
Members, to that motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. I will now go to Senator Bowden for another motion. Senator Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am going to make a motion that the Senate be in a recess to the call of the President. Members, we are waiting for the housing bill to come to us from the other bodies, so please don't go too far. Watch your emails. We will give 30 minutes notice to come back into session. And with that, I would move for the Senate to recess to the call of the President.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Republicans will caucus immediately following the recess. Upstairs.
All right, to the Bowden motion, all in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The Senate is in recess to the call of the President.